Good morning, Kansas City. My name is Mrs. Zeke. I am an English teacher at Southeast High School in the Kansas City Public School District, and we're here to talk English. And when I say talk English, I actually mean talk about ancient China. We're going to focus on a few different things throughout our time together and bring it all together with a main objective being around the English standards. But we're going to use ancient China to help us get there today. We are going to go over the history of ancient China, looking at a timeline of events, a map, and some other visuals and some key figures that went along with it. And then we're going to build on this understanding over the next 3 episodes. You will probably want something to write with and a notebook. I have a little game for us at the end of the episode, and then you might want to jot down some notes throughout as we go. So go ahead and grab a piece of paper, grab something to write with, and let's get started. Let's make sure we know exactly where China is. Here's a map of the world. You obviously can see the United States, and our neighbor over the Pacific Ocean is China. China has the largest population in the world with 1.4 billion residents. If you think about that in comparison to the United States, we have 328 million people. So China is quite large. It's also known as having its coconut culture. And Mandarin is the most spoken language in China. Another fun fact is that they just built a 250-acre solar farm in the shape of a panda. Now that you have your bearings, let's take a look at a timeline. I want you to see the general timeline first before we zoom in on ancient China. This gives you a better understanding of what was going on in the world before the United States or America was founded. As you can see, America is down there in the green. The majority of our history is from the Native American cultures. And then, of course, we jump into when Christopher Columbus founded us. Before all of that, there's so much history in China. You can compare it to Europe in the blue and then China up on the top. We are going to zoom in this focus right here in the Shang and Zhou dynasties. So taking a closer look at that timeline, you can see we're going to be going from the 1600 BC until the Zhou dynasty ended in about 221 BC. And you can find this image, if this is interesting to you, at chinahighlights.com. So let's jump into some facts. What was going on in ancient China? So again, we're looking at the 1600s to 221 BC. Chinese civilization began along the Yellow River in the Shang era. The Shang era started when Yu was able to fix a plumbing issue, if you will, in the Yellow River that flooded all of China. And because of that, Yu Sha was his name, was the first to start the dynasties in China. Dynasty, remember, is just a family that runs a country. After the Sha dynasty came the Shang dynasty, and they spread things around in the culture. They founded bronze, which reached a cultural peak in that time. After the Shang era, there are some traditional Chinese philosophers, such as people you may have heard of, Confucius and Taoism, developed in the feudal Zhou era as China expanded in territory and population. We will get a little bit more into detail about the differences between these two dynasties here in a few seconds. So the Shang dynasty was more specifically between 1600 and 1046 BC. Some of the first historical records were found during this time, and we know that because on stone there was found ancient Chinese symbols that's still used in the writing today. And this was the earliest recorded writing, which they were using bone to do and fire. And then after the Shang dynasty, the Zhou felt like it was heaven mandated, and we'll talk about this, their gift to the dynasty. So they took over the Shang dynasty in 1045 until 221 BC. And within the Zhao dynasty were different eras, whether it be differences in the people who took over or things going on in their history. So you have the Western Zhao era, which was the most peaceful of them all. And then the Spring and Autumn dynasty, and then the warrior states that kind of take up all of the Zhao dynasty. Both the Shang and the Zhao dynasty were considered peaceful, but the Spring and Autumn and warrior states portion of the Zhao dynasty wasn't as peaceful as the Shang was before. Let's talk about this mandate of heaven. If you think about what a dynasty means, then a family who's taking over or running a country, that family would never change, ideally. But as we see here in the Chinese history, there was a change in family rulers, and the Zhao felt like they were getting a mandate from heaven. They frowned upon things that the Shang dynasty was doing, and some of it was frowned upon for various reasons, but we're not going to get into that right now. But the Zhao felt like God was telling them that it was their turn to rule. So they took it upon themselves to kill the majority of the Shang family and take over. Whether or not God was telling them to do that or they just wanted to rule is still unknown. So thinking about all of the basics of ancient China, I want to give you a minute to see if you can separate the Shang and the Zhao dynasties. So I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds. I want you to look at these descriptors and tell me, was it the Shang or was it the Zhao? So you're looking at peaceful, given the mandate from heaven, first recordings of writing, ruled for 770 years, founded bronze, and expanded Chinese territory. 30 seconds on the clock. Go. $20 seconds. 10. 5. All right, time is up. Let's take a look at our answers. Here's the differences between. I tried to trick you with the peaceful just to see if you were listening. So both had peaceful periods of time. So of course you could put them in both. The Shang held the first recordings of writing and founded bronze. Zhao was given the mandate from heaven, ruled for 770 years, and expanded Chinese territory. Wonderful job. Here's what I want you to do this week. Write down this sentence in your notebook. Some major similarities and differences between ancient China and American history are, and do some research. Over the course of the week, think about what you already know from American history. Think about what you've heard from me and what you find in your research, and do a comparison and contrast. Next week, we're going to take a look at what you've found and try to practice summarizing the main idea of those things. Again, my name is Mrs. Zeke. It's been a pleasure spending the morning with you all, and we will see you next week.